And present. Here we go. All right. Hello, friends. So welcome to the Sugar Menopause Connection. So we're really going to be talking about cutting down on sugar specifically during perimenopause and menopause and the reasons why. Because when our estrogen drops off, that's when a lot of the changes start. So if you're perimenopausal, making these changes is really going to help set you up for that time post-menopause, when our vascular system really starts to change. And, if you are post-menopause, these are still changes you can make. It's never too late to start making changes. So let's go ahead and dig in. So first, since you're here with me, you obviously want to learn about what we're talking about, and I encourage you to just turn off everything in the background, put your phone away, close your email, do all that, and really think of this as some time as some self-care. I know self-care gets thrown around a lot. It's kind of a buzzword, but I feel like there are many definitions of that. And one of those is really taking time like this to educate ourselves and, set ourselves up for what's to come. So also in the emails that you received, you should have a link to download the Eating for Menopause PDF, and that's got some really awesome tips in it. It's got some different foods to try, a magic plate template. So it kind of helps you shows you kind of how to set your plate up so that it's balanced, and it's just got some really great stuff in there. It's got some links, some supplementation information. It's pretty awesome. So then that kind of goes along with everything we're talking about tonight. So if you're here, I'm going to assume that you are, either peri or postmenopausal. You're probably struggling with symptoms like hot flashes. I know that's a big one. Irregular periods, brain fog has been a really tough one for me. I'm going to talk a little bit about that. Fatigue, insomnia, also experience those. Mood swings, depression, anxiety. And I hear this a lot from people too. We start talking about menopause and you went to your doctor and they're like, well, that's all normal, or you look fine. Pat you on the back and send you on your way. And that's really frustrating when, we're suffering, we're trying to find answers and we just get a little pat on the tush and we get sent on our way. And so I want y'all to know that, yes, menopause is normal. I feel like it's a blessing to, get to go through it, right? We made it this far, but we do not have to suffer through it. So I'm not going to touch on hormone replacement therapy tonight. I am not anti-HRT, but I do recommend, everybody that comes to me, looking for help and has questions, the best things you can do are follow the guidelines that we're going to go over tonight. And then if you're still having issues, when you go to your doctor and say, look, I'm exercising, I'm eating right, I'm doing all these things and things still aren't right for me, you have a good baseline for, I've already made these changes, so what else can I do? And two, when we start talking about supplementation and medication, hormone replacement therapy and stuff like that, that has its place, but the foundation should always be diet and exercise. And so that's really what we're going to be talking about tonight. And I hear this a lot from my clients that I work with too. They've got sugar cravings, they're emotionally eating. And then when we start to go through perimenopause and menopause, when things are really wacky, that's all exacerbated. And so we're going to talk tonight about how sugar really impacts our health, especially post-menopause. And so if we don't have that good foundation, a good relationship with food, that healthy mindset going into this, that impacts everything we're doing as well. And so we're not going to talk as much about mindset tonight. We're just really going to talk about the physical parts of things. But just keep in mind too, it's all connected. That's what I work with my clients on. So a little bit about me. I am Maggie Powell. I am a certified health coach, and I specialize in menopause health and life coaching. So like I said, there's that mindset piece that goes along with, what we're eating, how we're treating ourselves, how we're living our lives. And so it's all connected. I'm personally perimenopausal, so someone who was very regular, like clockwork. So much so that when I was pregnant with my daughter, I knew before I got my period I was pregnant because I could feel it. And so this past couple of years, I've skipped a couple of periods and found out that you can have PMS and not get your period. How exciting. And so when that happened and I started getting hot flashes, I was like, I need to shift my practice and really dig into, what's going on here and how it can be helped through diet and exercise. We hear all the time, like fruits and veggies are really important. But I don't think that media or even school really gets across how incredibly important that is. What it comes down to is if you want to live a long, healthy life, you have to eat lots of fruits and vegetables. And that's hard to do, especially when you don't have a good foundation for it. And I know because I started struggling with my health. Really in my teens, I went vegetarian and I was not a good vegetarian. And then I was vegan. I was also not a good vegan. It's dirty vegetarian, dirty vegan. It was bad and it made me really sick. And also turns out I am gluten intolerant, possibly celiac. I never went so far as to get myself tested because I just cut it out. And because of all that too, I had adrenal fatigue, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that because that's really rough. So I'd gone through all of this. I'd done all this work. I was feeling like a normal human. And then I started having brain fog and I started having all these symptoms, and it was really frustrating for me. But I will say that, over the past 6 months, really, I've dug into it and I feel like a normal person again. So it is very possible with all these changes that we're going to talk about to kind of get it under control and feel like a normal person during this time. So I want to give a little definition here. So, we've got perimenopause. I think we all know that that's that time leading up to menopause. So it kind of starts in our mid 40s, sometimes in our 30s. I have a couple of friends who were when we were in our mid 30s, they're like, I am perimenopausal. Was absolutely possible. And I also have a friend who went to her doctor complaining about all these perimenopausal symptoms. And they're like, oh, you're too young to be in perimenopause. And she's like, but I'm in perimenopause. And then we've got the definition of menopause is actually 1 day. It is the 1 year anniversary of your final period. That is the definition of menopause. And so once you have that day, you're postmenopausal after that. And so really, what that postmenopausal time covers is, like I said, you got that time after menopause, your little anniversary, and that is when your estrogen levels start to change. So all of the symptoms we talk about with perimenopause and menopause are very similar. Where things really start to diverge is when the estrogen drops off. And that's when we really start to see the big kind of potentially scary changes if we're not taking care of ourselves, because estrogen is really magical and amazing for so many reasons, right? It helps us have babies. But it does so much for our bodies. And so when we have that change, we really need to compensate for it through diet and exercise. And so, here are the symptoms that I'm sure we are all intimately familiar with of menopause and perimenopause. And so, the irregular periods, vaginal dryness, which we're not going to talk about that a lot tonight, but there's a lot that can be done for that. Hot flashes, we're going to cover a little bit about chills, night sweats, sleep issues. I've started to get really terrible insomnia for the 3 days before my period. That started happening a couple of years ago. And that's really helped by exercise. Mood changes, thinning hair and dry skin, that really happens when our estrogen drops off, loss of breastfulness, depression, anxiety, menorrhage. And so that is kind of what it sounds like, where your hormones are just really kind of out of whack. And you've got, from my perspective, your rage isn't coming from nowhere. So it's those, I think things piled on and the frustrations and kind of the BS that we have to put up with as women sometimes. And that can come out as rage. Brain fog, which if you've never had brain fog, is kind of a bizarre feeling. It's just your brain won't work. Like I said, I really started to experience a lot of brain fog, which went along with adrenal fatigue. And so when I started to have it again, I was like, what on earth is going on? And then I realized I felt like I did the first trimester of pregnancy. I was like, wow, this is my hormones. What are we going to do about this? Again, back to diet and exercise. Thyroid dysfunction. Thyroid issues are really common in women, and especially perimenopause and postmenopause. We're going to talk a little bit about that, about thyroid dysfunction, that is really common, and it can exacerbate a lot of the other issues that we're dealing with. Increased allergies, another one I'm experiencing, bloating, and weight gain. And so I want to point out to you here that the weight gain especially can come post-menopause, and it's because estrogen is made by fat. And so once our kind of natural, estrogen production that we've been relying on up, to that point, once that drops off, our body goes, okay, well, we need estrogen, so we're going to pack on a little fat. And so that's, a few pounds is normal. We need that. But if you go to your doctor, you're like, I've gained 20 pounds, and they go, oh, it's just postmenopause. That's when we get to the not normal phases. And so I'll give you an example of a client I worked with. She was postmenopausal, and she did have a thyroid. She was hypothyroid. So and we knew she had thyroid issues, and she was going to her doctor, and she's like, I'm gaining all this weight. And he's like, oh, you're just postmenopausal. And I was like, I don't think that's the issue. She's like, I don't either. So I encouraged her to, keep digging. She ended up with an endocrinologist. Well, it turned out she was not only hypothyroid, she also has Hashimoto's, which is an immune condition too, an autoimmune condition. And so, she had these two things going on, and I was so glad that we worked together, because I was there advocating with her. I was like, you got to fight for this, because this isn't normal. And it turns out she has an autoimmune condition on top of all of that stuff. So, I'll get to this in a second, but we get dismissed a lot as women. And I'm going to share some numbers with you here. So women were not included in medical studies until the 1990s. So a lot of the data out there is based on healthy young men. So when that comes to a woman who is postmenopausal, there's a lot of stuff out there, just kind of like general health information that doesn't even apply to us. It applies to young men. And so, if you're, again, back to, if you're feeling frustrated and you're going to your doctor and they're like, oh, it's normal, no big deal, keep advocating for yourself and find somebody else. And kind of to add on to that, the US has the highest infant and maternal mortality rate in the developed world. And that really, when you look at the other numbers, it really just kind of goes throughout our lives. Women are dismissed and ignored in the medical field. Like if you go to the emergency room with symptoms of a heart attack, you are more likely to be dismissed and made to wait than a man. If a man goes in with, shortness of breath, chest pains, he is rushed back. Women statistically have to wait 30 minutes to an hour to be seen. Even though once we go through when we go through menopause or postmenopause, we are on the same we have the same likelihood of having a heart attack as a man. So the next thing I want to point out too is physicians receive just a few hours of training, of nutritional training in medical school, which means that if you go to your doctor, the likelihood that they know much about nutrition and can help you with nutrition is very slim. And 78% of women who were surveyed said menopause had interfered with their lives, and nearly 2/3 felt unprepared for menopause. Again, like our medical system is just not set up to help us prevent health issues and to help us address what's going on during menopause and postmenopause. But that doesn't mean that there isn't help. It just means that you have to kind of look outside what you're used to. 30% of women surveyed said that they didn't feel like their doctor was comfortable talking about menopause. This blew my mind. And then one that really got me interested in this too is the highest suicide rates among women are aged 45 to 64. Y'all, that's right when we're going through menopause and perimenopause. And I do not have data on this, but I imagine that it's at least hormonal. There's so many changes going on and we're not getting support that, you know, sometimes it leads to really bad stuff. And this one kind of blew my mind too, is despite an increase in awareness over the past decades, only half of women recognize that heart disease is the #1 killer of women in the United States. And that gets us into sugar. So first, progesterone. We're going to talk a little bit about what's going on in hormones. So progesterone. So during menopause, progesterone production decreases. Not surprising, right? And often more significantly than estrogen. And so what that means is this: the hormonal imbalance contributes to symptoms like mood swings, sleep disturbances, and irregular periods. And then our FSH hormone, again, decreases, right? Because we're not reproducing eggs anymore. And so this results in irregular periods and contributes to symptoms associated with menopause. And so back to, you can have PMS and not get your period, and that's your FSH kind of going all wacky. And then the most important one is estrogen. So during menopause, our ovaries produce less estrogen. So when that happens, we start to gain a little bit of weight to compensate for that. And then this decline causes various symptoms, such as the hot flashes, the night sweats, the mood swings, the vaginal dryness, and changes in menstrual patterns. And so when that estrogen drops off is really when we're start to be at high risk for the impacts of sugar and the impacts to our vascular system. So like sugar deeply impacts our hormones and it has no nutritional value. But if you're eating anything processed, it's got sugar in it. And it's likely that it has high fructose corn syrup in it. And eating that stuff is just like taking a shot of sugar. You know, when we think about that, we're like, well, that's ridiculous. No, I would never do that. But the amount of sugar that is in a lot of the foods that we're eating is just crazy. And then if we're eating a lot of it, that leads to, you know, all of these other problems that we're going to talk about. And so, and then really importantly, low estrogen levels reduce sensitivity to insulin, which means we can't clear sugar from our blood as efficiently as we used to, like in our 20s and 30s. And so that can lead to a lot of issues, health issues that we're going to talk about in a second. And so this is really driving a lot of the health risks that we think about for women post-menopause is the sugar. So first, insulin resistance. I know we hear this word a lot, but I'm not sure that a lot of us know exactly what it means. So basically it's prediabetes. And women are at very high risk during peri and post-menopause due to our decreased estrogen levels because that estrogen helps us process sugar. And if we have perpetually elevated blood sugar levels, and that results in our liver being unable to process glucose, and that leads to prediabetes, insulin resistance, possibly eventually diabetes. And so what you really need to do, like if you're somebody who eats a lot of processed food and a lot of processed carbs and sugars, the first step is to try to cut down on those. You know, we talk a lot about eating whole foods, and this is why. Because when we're eating whole foods, even if it's a piece of fruit, it still has the fiber in it. Our body has to work to break that stuff down. And it's just not going to impact our blood sugar the way processed carbs and sugars do. Excuse me. Another one that I've been reading so much about is non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. And this one is pretty sinister because it's not talked about that much, but we're at huge risk for it. So it's a step after insulin resistance. And, you know, again, we're at high risk after menopause because we don't have that estrogen helping us anymore. And this is so significant that we're at 2.5 times more, like higher risk than we were pre-menopause. And basically what happens is we have too much fat stored in our liver, and that results in liver dysfunction. It can be fatal, but it's absolutely avoidable through diet and exercise. I give an example. My dad has a good friend. My dad's in his 70s, hangs out with his bestie. And his bestie's a teetotaler and was just diagnosed with non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. And I was like, does he eat a lot of sugar? And he's like, oh yeah, he loves donuts. And I'm like, oh yes, he does. So I have some donuts here for them. But it really is an issue, especially like as we get older, when things don't work as well. Reducing the amount of sugar we're ingesting is the easiest and most important thing we can do. And the next one is adrenal health. So like I said, I used to have adrenal fatigue, and it came from just poor nutrition, stress, like constant stress. I didn't exercise. I wasn't taking care of myself, and I was super stressed all the time. And so we talk about adrenal fatigue. It's kind of a misnomer. So when it was first described, they thought, oh, or your adrenals are not producing. They're actually producing cortisol fine. It's just that the pathway between your brain and your adrenal glands kind of gets worn out. It's like a road that traveled too much and it's not being maintained. And that maintenance comes from diet and exercise. And so when we can improve that, our adrenal health improves as well. And so, this results in fatigue, brain fog, weakness, insomnia, muscle weakness, and just generally feeling like garbage. Like adrenal fatigue is the freaking worst. And, when we go into menopause and we don't have that good adrenal health, again, it impacts everything. Everything is connected, everything's related. And when we don't have that good adrenal health supporting us, when we're going through this really stressful period of menopause, and it can really just make things worse. And so, another thing that happens as women too, is we have a lot of stress on our bodies from getting our periods every month. Having babies, and plus just kind of generally women in society. And so the more we can do to kind of cut down on that stress and cut down on oxidative stress, the better off we are. And then another risk that we have is thyroid health. So, thyroid conditions are really common in the United States, but they didn't used to be. It's really kind of a new phenomenon, and it's because of our diet and our exercise. I know so many women who were diagnosed in their 20s with hypothyroidism. And so once we go through menopause, then our thyroid health kind of is even at more risk, because our estrogen levels have dropped. We're not processing sugar the way we used to. And if we don't have that good nutrition and that exercise, and, vitamin A is really important for our thyroid health, which we get from fruits and veggies, then we're at even greater risk for having thyroid issues on top of everything else. And if all of that was not enough, sugar fuels your hot flashes. So high blood sugar has been linked to hot flashes. Blood sugar levels can be affected by a number of things. And I think this is something we don't think about a lot too, is, we think about, you eat sugar and you have high blood sugar, but also stress, illness, lack of sleep, impacts of medication, and a diet high in saturated fats and sugars all contribute to high blood sugar. And so it says here, according to one study, women with higher blood sugar levels had more frequent hot flashes, and it didn't matter what they weighed or what their estrogen levels were. It really comes down to, having high blood sugar and your body focusing on getting that down. And so it's not focusing on helping you regulate your body temperature, basically. And so if that's, like all the other stuff I said, hot flashes are improved by less sugar. And so, the good news is everything that we just covered is helped, improved, and even prevented by healthy diet and exercise. And so what this really comes down to, back to talking about our liver, is that we need to let our body detox every day. And there's so much stuff out there right now about detoxing, and there's like all these detox teas and these detox diets and blah, 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 blah. We have a natural ability to detox. That is literally what our liver does. If you need help with detoxing, it's because you're putting too much load on your liver, and the way you detox is putting less stress on it. And so I'm going to talk about how to do all this. So reduce your toxic load with the products you're using and the foods that you're eating. So, in my house, I spent years, I have an environmental studies degree, biology degree. And so, obviously really into this stuff, but one of the things I really focus on is making sure that, the shampoos, the stuff I'm putting on my body, my lotions, any makeup I wear, anything like that is not full of heavy metals and is not going to pollute the environment, because that's not going to pollute my body. And there's so much stuff out there now. Like, I'll give you an example. I don't use wax or plastic coated floss anymore. I use one made out of coconut because it doesn't have all the stuff in it, and I'm not putting microplastics in my body every morning when I floss my teeth. Eat organic foods when possible. And there's the Clean 15 list that comes out every year. That's really good to follow. I don't have that included here, but if you're kind of trying to figure out, what to prioritize when you're eating organic foods, that's a really great resource. Cutting down on processed food, and really trying to avoid high fructose corn syrup, white sugar, and artificial sweeteners. There was just a study that came out saying that sucralose, also known as Splenda, actually breaks down our DNA. That's supposed to be like one of the good ones, and it turns out that it's not. So really just trying to, if you're going to eat something sweet, make it a piece of fruit. And if you need to, put something in your coffee every morning, honey is great, maple syrup, coconut sugar, things like that are not gonna, So yeah, like honey's great, because it's not as hard to process. And it's not going to impact our blood sugar. Like, all sugar is going to impact our blood sugar in some capacity. But when you look at like the glycemic index, honey, maple syrup, coconut sugar, stuff like that, is not going to impact your blood sugar like high fructose corn syrup. Like, high fructose corn syrup is the worst for our blood sugar. Cutting down on alcohol and caffeine. So, if you're a big coffee drinker, like if you go to Starbucks every morning, some of those drinks have almost a half a cup of sugar in them. Maybe you're not going to get in like the big fancy drink at Starbucks in the morning, but you would be shocked at how much sugar they can fit into those. And even if you're drinking just black coffee, there is a threshold around 4 cups where even if you don't have sugar with your coffee, the caffeine itself will start to impact your blood sugar. So, having 1 to 2 cups in the morning, and then cutting yourself off and that being it, is a really great place to start. And this is really kind of what I'm going to talk about in a second, is the Shred 10. So the Shred 10 guidelines, this is how I eat. This is what I have my clients do is, and if you look at this and you're like, oh my God, I can't do that. Ease yourself into it. I'm going to share a little bit about how you can do that. So adding more fruits and vegetables, taking Juice Plus capsules, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. I've been on Juice Plus for about 7 years. It's actually how I kind of accidentally cured my adrenal fatigue, because it's just really good nutrition. Also the complete shake. So I'm going to talk about drinking plenty of water, deep breathing, meditation, journaling, something I've really gotten into the past couple of years, and it's amazing. Trying to exercise most days. We're going to talk about exercise during perimenopause, especially, in just a minute. Caffeine and alcohol. Trying to get in at least a 12-hour fast every day. So, this is not eating after 6 p.m. or whatever your window is, but really making sure that you get that at least 12 to 14-hour window every day where you're letting your body digest and reset. Cutting down on processed foods, eliminating gluten and dairy, which I know scares a lot of people, but it's really not that tough. And again, if you do it over time, you don't miss it. And then eliminating artificial and refined sugars, because of the impact it has on our blood sugar. So exercise, this becomes imperative once we go through menopause, because we start to lose our muscle mass. Like, I'm sure we all know that. It increases our risk of osteoporosis, our risk of heart attack increases, again, because that estrogen level drops, or the estrogen levels drop off, and estrogen gives us so much vascular protection. Like, it's amazing. You don't hear about women having heart attacks really in their, before like their 60s, right? And it's because we have estrogen protecting us. So once we don't have that anymore, we kind of get on the same playing field as men as far as heart attack risk. So, if you're exercising, trying to lift heavy things, and heavy things can be your body. I love body weight exercises. Making sure you sweat, because if you're sweating, that actually helps your body regulate your temperature when you start to get a hot flash. So if you're able to sweat, if you're able to detox every day, kind of get your body heated up from the inside, you're actually less likely to have like a crazy hot flash. And because it helps regulate our body temperature. And so this is another thing too, you're not going to get bulky if you lift weights. Women gain about 0.5 pound of muscle when they're lifting weights like a month. On the other side of that, men gain 2 to 3 pounds, which is why they bulk up, because they've got the testosterone. We don't have enough testosterone to get bulky like a man. If anything, you're going to slim down and just be lean. You're not going to be like have giant big muscles. So and it's absolutely possible to build muscle after menopause. I feel like there's this kind of attitude and this feeling that like once you go through menopause, like it's all over. It's absolutely not. And I know women who have started lifting weights and started and changed their diet and all of these things post menopause, and you never know what they look like pre-menopause. They look healthier, honestly, than they did before they went through menopause. And being gentle with yourself. So, I have a friend who loves CrossFit, and she's just a few years older than me, and she's perimenopausal, and she started like having this crazy fatigue and super heavy periods and all this stuff. And she was like, it's the CrossFit, like it's just too much. And she talked to her trainer, and she was like, yes, it is actually. It is too much. Come here and like, let's do this other thing while you're working through this. And so it really doesn't have to be something crazy. Do what works for you. And physical activity, the other part of this too, is it can lower your blood glucose for up to 24 hours or more after you work out, making your body more sensitive to insulin. So back to everything we said about estrogen, when we get that drop off and we are more likely to become insulin resistant, that exercise becomes so important. And that can just be a walk after dinner. If you do a 15-minute walk after a meal, it immediately decreases your blood sugar. Just that small physical activity. So every little bit counts. Healthy fats. So, fats are important for a lot of reasons. Our brain needs fat to function. Thinking back to the low-fat diets of the 90s, and what that must have been doing. Like I was thinking about it today. It was like my mom was perimenopausal during that phase. And I just can't imagine like what that was doing to her body when she was eating all the extra sugar from not having the fat. But when we talk about processed foods, there are not good fats in processed foods. They usually have corn, canola, soy, safflower, some sort of oil in them. And what happens when we eat these oils that are super processed, that are not something found in nature? Like, yes, we find corn, right? We grow corn, but then it's like squeezed and processed and bleached to get corn oil. And that is not anything close to what we would find in nature. And so when we eat these oils and our body uses them to make our cell walls, they're impermeable. And if you think back to biology class in high school, and you learned about the cells and things going in and out, and they have to have that permeable cell wall. So when you don't have that permeable cell wall, you're basically don't have a functioning cell. And so if you have lots and lots of not functioning cells, then you have things like adrenal fatigue and thyroid dysfunction and heart disease and all of these other things. And so that's one really easy change we can all make, is trying to cut down on the processed foods and go into your kitchen, throw out all your processed oils and replace them with coconut and olive oils. You do have to be a little bit careful with olive oil, because the US does not regulate oils. And so something can say olive oil on it and not be 100% olive oil. So I'm doing some research on brands, and I will share that eventually. But just know that you need to get something high quality. Like you absolutely get what you pay for when you buy an oil at the grocery store. And trying to get those fats from nuts and meats and avocados, because those are not processed. That's the way nature made them. And, you know, whatever is a whole food form of that is fine. And protein. So, you know, we hear a lot about, excuse me, losing muscle mass, you know, especially post-menopause, and what we need to do to support the muscle that we have and to be able to build more muscle to kind of make up for what we're losing and maintain it is make sure we're eating protein, because our muscles are made of protein. And also protein is very satiating. You know, if you're ever eating and you still feel hungry, take a look at what you just ate. You know, if it didn't have a lot of good fats and protein, that's probably why. There's actually a theory that says that we will continue to eat until we have basically met our protein needs. You know, whatever you're eating, you're just going to keep going until your body's like, okay, I've got the protein. And so lots of things have protein in them, like fruits and veggies have protein, beans have protein, nuts have protein, but we also want to make sure we're getting complete proteins. And what that means, again, back to biology class, is we've got the 7 essential amino acids, and a complete protein is something that has all of those. And so I have a picture of the complete protein here. I take this every day. They're both so good. And part of that is because it is complete protein. It is a plant-based complete protein. And it also has fiber in it. Like if you're somebody who doesn't poop every day, this stuff is amazing. But I will say too, like if you're somebody who likes a protein powder, be very selective about what you're using, because back to letting our bodies detox every day, a lot of protein powders, pea protein, for example, is highly processed in most protein powders it goes into. And so when it's like hydrolyzed protein powder, for example, that means it's all broken down and it's super concentrated. And what that concentration and that breaking down of those cell walls and the hydrolyzation process, we're also releasing heavy metals. Like all vegetables and fruits have heavy metals in them. It's just the way things work. It's what they do. But when you're then concentrating them and breaking them down in a way that nature does not, we're putting ourselves at risk for heavy metal toxicity from the food we're eating. And you can just imagine what that would do to your body, especially post-menopause, when you get all this other stuff going on. So do some research on the protein powders that you're using. I will send out a link to this. That is one of my favorite things. And it's part of what we're talking about. We talk about the shred tents. These are the complete shakes I was talking about. These are NSF certified, meaning they do not have any heavy metals in them. What the Juice Plus company says is in them is what's actually in them. Nothing more, nothing less. And so if you're somebody who wants a protein powder, this stuff is awesome. The other thing too is it has soy protein in it, and it's water washed soy protein. So it's basically like soy flour. It's just kind of like ground up edamame. And the phytoestrogens from soy protein are incredibly beneficial, especially when we're going through menopause. And there's actually data on this from the Juice Plus company on research they've done on it, because they were like, does it do what we think it does? And the answer is yes, it does. And so making sure we're getting plenty of fruits and vegetables. And so this is really, really important. Because we talk about, you know, we all know we need fruits and vegetables, but I don't think a lot of the time we talk about why. And one of those things is that fruits and vegetables contain enzymes, they contain minerals, and they can contain vitamins. And our body needs all of those things to make the chemical reactions that we need to make every day to live. And so you think back, we were talking about adrenal fatigue and the cortisol pathway to our brain. That needs nutrition to work and to make it happen. The same with our vascular system working properly. Same with our liver working properly, our brain working properly. It needs fruits and vegetables. And Enzymes help break down fats and carbs and protein and all the other things that we need to eat every day. We need to eat fruits and vegetables with those so that our body can do what it needs to do. And we really need to aim for 7 to 10 servings a day. And that is hard for a lot of people. For me, before I started digging into changing the way I eat, I think I was going days, even though I was a vegetarian, I would probably go a couple of days without actually eating a fruit or vegetable. It's entirely possible. And I know plenty of people like that. And so, we start talking about it. They're like, oh, I eat great. And then they're like, actually, maybe I don't eat great. And so one thing I do every day, and this was one of the questions that came up when we were prepping for this, is supplementation. And so in doing research for this, I was like, obviously I'm going to talk about Juice Plus. I want to talk about the omegas. I want to talk about everything I have listed here, but I started doing research on like black cohosh and red clover and a couple of other of the common ones that come up. And there's not actually hard, solid data on those. So I didn't include them here because a lot of the stuff that we see on those supplements, I think is just anecdotal. So magnesium, we know we need it for bone health, right? So osteoporosis, preventing osteoporosis, magnesium is really important. Most magnesium supplements are also paired with calcium because they go together. And it also improves mood and sleep. I've been taking a magnesium supplement for years and I love it. And it really does help with the mood and the sleep. Now the Juice Plus, so it has 45 fruits and vegetables in it. And you cannot go to the grocery store and get that variety and the freshness of it. And the stuff is really amazing because it's basically plant powders. It's so minimally processed. Like it's basically taken from the farms that grow this stuff. And the Juice Plus company partners with these farmers, like they're family owned farms. It's really a great operation and they're very quickly processed. So much so that they still have the enzymes. Like it's basically like eating a raw fruit or vegetable. It's just really good nutrition. And it's the easiest way to get good nutrition. And they also make a vegan omega, which they've done some research on too, because again, they wanted to say, is this as amazing as we think it is? And the answer is yes. And so, we all need omegas. I didn't talk too much about that, but we know like we need those, right? We're supposed to get them from fish. But the thing about like the fish oils and capsules, a lot of times it's rancid. That's why you get the burps from it. And again, it contains heavy metals because it's made from fish. And this vegan omega is completely plant-based and they basically skip the fish. It's a really interesting process where they're able to get the oils, the algal oils out of the algae that the fish they would usually eat, and then they kind of squeeze the fish and get it out of the fish. Well, there's no fish involved. It's amazing. And another one that I have discovered is Feminescence. And so that is a maca supplement. And this one, again, clinical trials, loads of research on it. And I started taking it for my hot flashes, and within like 6 weeks, I stopped having hot flashes. It was amazing. And so they have one for perimenopause and one for postmenopause because there's loads of different maca. And there's lots of research on what those different plants do. And some are better for perimenopause and some are better for postmenopause. So highly recommend it. And I also not a link to their website. And then another one that came up, and I'm a big fan of, is St. John's wort. Again, there is so much research on St. John's wort. It blows my mind how much data there is and like just how powerful of an herb it is. But it is great if you're having anxiety, if you're having depression, if you're having mood swings. St. John's wort is awesome. It is really like having a mild antidepressant without the side effects. And then flax is another one. Nobody's really going to like go eat flax or like grind it up and eat it. but it's great to put into smoothies. Flax oil is awesome. Again, something you put into smoothies. You can put it on your salad. Anything like that. You put in your coffee, just to get that in your body, because it's great for hot flashes. And also the seeds are very high in fiber. So again, if you're somebody who doesn't poop every day, working in flax is great. And then checking your B12 levels. So low B12 and a lot of the symptoms that we have in menopause and perimenopause are overlapping. And as we age, we do not absorb B12 as well as we used to. It gets absorbed in the small intestine. And as we age, we're just not as efficient as absorbing B12. And so a lot of older women have B12 deficiency. So if you haven't, next time you go to your doctor, get your B12 levels tested and see what comes back. And I would say keep consistently doing that and asking for it if your doctor is not offering it, to make sure that you've got enough B12. Because again, having low B12 is, as someone who was tested and had no B12 in my body, it is almost debilitating if you don't have enough B12. And so if you have low B12 on top of everything else, you're going to be hurting. So make sure you have enough B12. And another one I didn't throw in here, but D. So get your D levels checked as well, and then find a good supplement for that. Yeah, picking supplements. So, I've shared my favorites here. I have my brands that I love. But if you go out and you're like, you go to the store and you're like, there's like 85 different kinds of D that I could buy, I don't know what I need. Research the brands that you're looking at, because supplementation is not regulated by the FDA, which means that even if they say, oh, this is St. John's wort, for example, there's no regulation saying it has to have a certain amount of St. John's wort. And there's no regulation saying that other things cannot be added into that St. John's wort as a filler, or, as just a ingredient that's not, it's not vetted or tested. And so they can source stuff from wherever and they don't have to source it consistently from the same places. And so you don't necessarily know what you're getting in a supplement. So Gaia Herbs is one that I find is consistently good. And they're based in the North Carolina mountains, which is close to my heart, but they're a really great brand. Any of the Juice Plus products are amazing. And there are a few others that I can share with you, but I would really say, if you're getting anything, make sure that it's not the hard pills. Like Centrum, for example. I have clients come to me and they're like, oh, I take my multivitamin every day, take my Centrum. Like, oh. Because those are all made in a lab. Like the vitamins that are in them are made in a lab, which means so they're man-made. And then those pills are shellacked. So your body is not absorbing anything. They're referred to as bad pan bullets by people who work in hospitals because they don't get digested. And so you're wasting your money and you're putting something that is literally shellacked into your body and hoping that you're going to have some benefit from it. And, when we think about it like that, like ew. So make sure that it's something that is bioavailable, either in a powder form or in a capsule that has a powder in it, or a liquid, so that you're actually going to digest it and it's going to get into your body. And that's why I like the Juice Plus products so much, is because that is exactly what they are. They come in tapioca is what they use to make the pills. So it's very easy to break down and digest. And there's been loads of studies on like the bioavailability of all this stuff. And that really does actually work. So there's not a lot of brands out there that have primary research. So what that primary research is, like what I'm talking about with Juice Plus, where they have taken money, given it to a university to say, we have an idea, we have a hypothesis, we want you to test it and see what happens. And some people get a little persnickety about that, but the thing is, like, that's how research works. But they're not doing it to gain something and say, oh, we're going to twist the words. Like they really legitimately want to know, does this work? And does it say does it do what we think it does? And so, if you, on the other end of that, you go to the store and buy vitamin C, well, everybody knows you need vitamin C, but there's no primary research on that vitamin C to say whether or not it's bioavailable. Centrum's a great example. There's no clinical research on Centrum. They're just like, hey, we're going to throw some stuff in here and here's your vitamins. So just make sure that they're reputable brands, they have good reviews. You can see where they're sourcing their stuff, just to make sure that it is what you think you're getting. So, sorry, went on a little rant there, but very passionate about supplements. And so that brings us to the end of our workshop. So, what we talked about is really building a foundation for your health and building a foundation for yourself through the process of menopause and perimenopause. I was having a conversation with a friend today and I was like, there's no like end goal. You're like, I had a salad today and so now I'm healthy. It's really making those lifestyle changes and, kind of taking it one day at a time. So, we have a tendency to be all or nothing. And I think when, if you're trying to make changes, you've looked at any of this and you're like, oh my God, that's overwhelming. I can't do that. Choose one little thing and do it. This is what I do when I work with my clients. Like we pick a thing and we do that thing. If it's drinking more water, focus on drinking more water, and then focus on, bringing in more whole foods and less sugar, and little tiny baby steps like that. But I would love to talk to y'all. I'm gonna go run over here and get my, oh, I don't have my link. I'm going to send you a link tomorrow to schedule a time with me. If y'all want to, I would love to talk to you and just see where you are and see, what recommendations I can give to you. If you want to work with me, that would be amazing. I do, have 90-day programs. I do the Shred 10 every month. We start the first Monday of every month. So the next one actually starts next Monday. If you want to talk about that, and just talking about those long-term changes that, excuse me, to set yourself up for being healthy, perimenopausal and postmenopausal. And so that, excuse me, is all I have for y'all this evening. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and let me pop over here. There we go. Grab this. And if y'all have any questions, I will love to hang out for a second and see what y'all have to and stop recording here. Yes.